Okay, it looks like I'm actually live. It's kicked in. Whoo! Hey! Good morning. Here we go again. Welcome to whatever the date is, 10th of September. If you've got any video questions, please pop them in the comments. In fact, if you've got any comments, if you can let me know whether I'm actually coming through on this and whether the quality's any good, because I don't know about you. But this was how I started today, going on and sorting out the speed test problems. Hey, g'day, Michael Flaherty. Great, well, you're here. Hey, Michael, how's this coming through? Can you actually see me? Can you actually hear me? Because this is how I started today. This was my looking at the map and seeing, yeah, this is Australia and this is our internet. But hopefully, I'm going to keep on soldiering on. And if this all falls apart, then maybe in a week's time, we're going to have some half decent internet and we can get back. Great. Oh, and coming through. All right, well, then we will keep going. So what's been going on? Hey, I'll tell you what, we're going to get into some questions in a minute, but do you know what I did 2 days ago? I went out and spoke to a room full of real people. How good was that? I don't have any more on the calendar, but it was good. So bit by bit, we're going to trickle back in there and get into the real world. Hey, Mark McPherson, thanks. Good, I can see and hear you. Fantastic. Oh, so I just want to follow up quickly to start because actually, Mark, I'm going to get to your question really soon. I want to follow up with a question from Amanda Mead last week via on LinkedIn. And she was talking about this vampire effect, and I wasn't exactly sure what she meant. So we connected and she sent me a clip, and I'm going to show you the clip and I'm going to show you what the problem was, and I'm going to tell you what the solution is to that problem. So this was what Amanda was experiencing.
So today's step backwards is about really, should I set up a law practice? And if so, what should we do? What should our areas be?
Okay, so I mean, for me, I really thought I'd like to do family law. Originally, I thought crime, but I had a look at that.
So when you can see that's not a good look, is it? So this idea of where this vampiring, where you're half going in, half going out. So this is the solution to that. Number one, that if you are using a green screen, that it's got to be correctly lit. It's got to be flatly lit. Now, you can go on and you can just use no green screen at all. And the computational power and artificial intelligence and all that has just got to the point now where it enables us to sit in any sort of a room and it can cut out a half decent mask and put it in, put an artificial background in. But if you help it, then you're going to stop a lot of these problems that are happening. And so one way you can help it is to use a green screen. And the reason we use green is because it's the color least seen in the human body. If you light it flat, so it's nice and flat, and so there's no crinkles in it, and it's not dark on this side and light on that side, you're going to give yourself a much better chance. The next thing you want to do, and I'm not exactly sure on this, but I'm pretty sure it works, is because the AI works on cutting out, what it reckons is a human face or a human figure. If you put two human figures in there, you're making it work extra over time. So that's more computational power that goes in to go, oh yes, there's one person here, one person there, and less power to going in and cutting out a clean background. You also want to upgrade your computer. Now, whether it's getting a new computer, I know nobody wants to do that. I get that. Whether you want to put some extra processing power, some extra RAM in there, but the more processing grunt you have, the better you are going to get a cutting out of a key. And the next thing is less movement. Now, every time, have you noticed on Zoom that if you just, if you're showing a PowerPoint or something, it normally comes through quite okay? That's because it's the same information just being coded into like a shorthand. So it's very easy because there's no movement, there's no new images or new pictures. But when you talk and you're like me and you've got, I cannot talk without my hands. I can't do it. So it's a new picture. Every time I move, it's a new image. And so there's a lot of processing that goes into there. So if you are talking and you're having this problem, the less you move, the less problem there's going to be. So anyway, there's a couple of ideas to get you up and going. I want to move on to Mark McPherson's question here. So here we go, Mark. Strap in. This may take a little while. Not too long, but I'm going to try to make it interesting for you. Mark was saying that he's been out shooting some pieces to camera. So piece to cameras are where, like me now, I'm facing the camera and I'm talking to you now. And it's where you were recording those. So, recording some videos for educational purposes, building his brand and his image, putting them up on social media. So he went out and about and around Sydney. And he went out in the middle of the day and moved around Sydney, around to, the harbour and some nice backdrops. And he got back and he wasn't happy with the images because they were pretty dark and contrasty. And then he went out in the afternoon, later in the afternoon, and reshot them. And they came back looking a lot better. So what the heck is going on with there? Right, Mark, this is a good question because I always like taking people back and taking them on a little bit of a journey to understanding what photography is about. Because when you understand this and what your camera does, it's going to make everything so much easier. Now, just as a little visual, this is not Mark because I know Mark does not wear pink frocks. All right, Mark wears green frocks. No, Mark doesn't wear frocks at all. I just grabbed this image off to give you an idea of what Mark would have been experiencing. The one on the left in the midday, this is sort of the images Mark would have been getting back. Very contrasty, dark shadows, very light and dark and just not appealing. Yet he would have got a nicer, fuller frame shot on the right. So I just grabbed this. Thank you, Jennifer Genvier. Thank you for letting me use your photo. So what's going on there? What you've got to understand, Mark, is that your camera is like a lizard. If you get this into your head and always understand that your camera is actually pretty dumb, it has a lizard brain. Let me go back and explain why this is. And if you always understand this, you'll always know that you have more power than your camera. And just with a little bit of knowledge, you can make your camera do what you want it to do rather than your camera controlling you. You've got to also understand that the human eye is amazing because when we look at something, like we look at a scene and we go, that just looks good. It doesn't matter whether it's light or dark or different shades of light or it's a bit glary. We can look at it and our eye compensates. It's nothing we have developed comes even close to the ability of the eye to see wide and to zoom in and, all at the same time, seemingly. Every camera we got is nowhere near it. So just to give you an example, this is what you see in most smartphones. This is the lens configuration. I know there's a lot of stuff going on in there. The lenses on most smartphones are better than the lenses on Hubble Space Telescopes, but still, and even with this AI and processing power, we are not there yet. So let's go back to what the first photographer saw. He was sitting around in a cave and he was probably looking at these funny sort of like, oh, what's that on the wall? There's some light coming in. He said, oh, it looks like a bit of a mushroom there. What's going on there? Well, what he was likely seeing was the very first pinhole camera. Now, I'm going to show you how to make a pinhole camera. I'll just tell you very, very quickly if you don't know this, because if you're at home with your kids and or anyone you know, have a go at this. It's actually a lot of fun. A camera is a really simple device and you can make one with a shoebox. What you do is you put a pinhole in one side of the shoebox, not big, pretty much the smallest pinhole that you can make in there. Put a little pinhole in there and then in the back, just tape a little bit of white paper and see on the left there, it's got a peephole. That's actually just so you can, that's like your viewfinder. So you can look at that white bit of paper. You close the top of the box and then you just carry your shoebox around, but you almost like you're shooting over the back of your shoulder. So find something that's bright. It's got to be bright and contrasty, and have a little look through your peephole, and you will see that on that white sheet is an image like a TV frame, but the image is upside down. That's the basis of a camera. You put a hole small enough, the light comes in, crosses over, and then keeps going out the other side and expanding, and it inverts itself. There you go. It's just the physics is out there. That's how cameras started. So if you look, this is the image you'll see on the white paper. So that would be someone with a hand up there and their hair and their shoulders. So it's quite obvious what you're seeing in there, just a little bit blurry. So there you've got a camera. Now, let's go back and just understand that the first photographer was curious. That's all he was. Let's go forward a million years. People are still curious. And somebody one day was sitting down looking at an avocado and went, oh, you know, when you cut the avocado and you leave it out in the sun or just in the air, it goes dark. But, you know, you can scrape the top off it and it's good underneath. I wonder what's going on there. Well, someone with that same sort of curiosity was probably in an industrial site in around the 1800s, and somebody probably spilt a drum of silver halide. I don't know what they used it for. It was just this chemical. And they went, oh, you know, when you spill it and it gets exposed to the light, it goes dark. And then somebody like this guy in the early 1800s went, what about if we put some of that silver halide on a piece of glass? And we put that piece of glass in one of those pinhole cameras, just like in a box with a hole on the front, and put it there. And where the light strikes the silver halide, it goes dark. Ha ha, look at that. It's your first negative. And this is how photography came around. So this was all just came out of curiosity, but this is sort of like the important bit. This is where it gets important to your question. When this happened in the 1800s, there was a big stroke of luck. It was just a big fluke that if you looked at the world in black and white, which photography was, they discovered something, that the blue sky and the green grass and the brown rocks and the skin tone and the stones and the bricks, you know, back in those days, life was like a little bit less bright than it is now. It's a bit grimier. And it was just lucky because all of those, which were most of the things that you photographed, fell in what they called, it was like 18% grey. It was just, they called it middle grey. It was like an average grey. And so the whole of photography was based around this middle grey. And everything we do today, every camera, every smartphone, everything, the fundamental statistic, whatever you want to call it, is 18% middle grey. This is important because when you go out to take a photo, your camera, as smart as you think it is, and as much as I talk up the iPhones and the smartphones, they are wonderful, they have lizard brains, they're dumb. Their one job that they say they have to do above all, their lizard brain says, I have to make everything average middle grey, because they don't know what you're looking at. To them, it's just like different shades of light and dark. And it just goes, well, if something's really white, I've got to try to make it middle grey. That's my job. If it's really black, I got to try to like put some more light on that and make it middle grey. So when you go out in the modern world, the problem is 21st century is anything but average. We have created this weird world that we go from inside, outside. We got big patches of white. We've got black asphalt everywhere. It's crazy out there. So you take your lizard brain camera out there, and the only thing it says that it wants to do, in any of these crazy situations is try to make everything 18% grey. So it looks at a situation like that and it goes, oh, okay, it looks at the biggest area, just averages out, so I'll make all that sort of middle grey. But it means everything that's in the foreground, like in this situation with less light on it, it brings all the light down. It can't just bring light down on one part of the photo, it brings the light down on all parts of the photo. And that goes dark. And we've all been in this situation where we stand in front of a great scene and we go, oh, I can't see myself. Oh, what's going on there? That's what's going on. Same thing. When you go out in the snow, this is the absolute classic. You're out there and you're taking a lovely shot, but it comes back all this sort of grey and dark colour. That's because it sees all that white and it goes, my job is to make everything as best as possible middle grey. So it brings the exposure down so the snow, instead of looking white, looks grey. Now, this is the classic for speakers. We stand on stage in front of a dark background, and when you see the camera sees all that black, it doesn't know it's the black backdrop of the stage. It just goes, oh, I need to make all that more grey. So it brings up the light and overexposes everything in an attempt to make the background grey, but you in the spotlight then just go white and look awful. This is such a classic example. So what can you do about that? When you go out there, Mark, and you go out in the middle of the day where it's actually like this high sun and you've got bright skies and you've got dark shadows and light reflecting off bitumen that's glary, it's very, very complex. And so what we can do is you can take reflectors out there and reflect a bit of extra light into these dark shadows that you've got. But the problem is, why would you want to go and do all that? It's fiddly. I mean, if you've got a film crew around you, sure. But if you're taking your gear out, you don't want to go down that path, that route. So, easiest rule of thumb is to look into the light. If you're looking into a bright light source and you feel bright light coming in your eyes, it doesn't have to be just a pinpoint of light like that. You could be standing in the middle of the day rather than standing out in the sun. If you went into like an alcove of a building and were facing out where the bright light, where you're looking into the brightness, was coming back on you, general rule of thumb, if you can feel the bright light coming back on you, you're probably looking half decent. So it should be bright. And for people who go, hey, I don't like bright lights, you got to toughen up, because anyone who stands on stage, anyone who stands in front of the screen or in front on TV or the lens, you've got to get used to bright light coming back into your eyes. So back to you, Mark. What time of day are we going to do this? So if you're out there in the middle of the day, that sun is way overhead and it's coming down. It's very contrasty and, creating these dark sockets and shadows under your eyes. And the sky, even though it looks blue, is just very glary and white. Best thing is to come down later, as you have experienced, when the sun and the light is generally going down. So you're looking at the bright light. You've got more opportunity to look at the bright light. So this is so slow. This is internet so slow. Everything is just slowed down. If I'm saying to you, then look into a bright light and look into the sun, a common question that comes back, but isn't soft light more flattering? Yeah, it can be. And if you're, got incredibly good skin and incredibly good looking like this, it looks even better. But it's a mistake. It's a real mistake. It's what you do with the light. And if you want to know how good hard light can be, like strong sunlight, go and look at Horst P. Horst. He's a fashion photographer from the 1920s and 30s and 40s, the golden age of Hollywood cinema. Just masterful. He shot everything with hard light. So it just puts an end. If you want to, go and ask any photographer about Horst P. Horst. So how can you get this movie star light? When you go, this sort of, when you're in that, in a city or something, or you see that sun just going down over the horizon, it is the most amazing light. You might have heard of called about the golden hour. It's that last hour when the sun gets really low. And it is literally movie star light. All these shots here, and again, if you're got an attractive face, of course it looks better. But all this is that very low light where it's almost level into your eyes, and it's hard light, but it has this little bit of diffusion about it. So in answer to your question, late in the afternoon is better, but if you've got a really good piece of camera that you want to do and you sort of know it, time it so you're in that last light and it's bright in your eyes, you're going to look $1 million, Mark. Got to tell you, you're going to look so much younger. So don't go out in the middle of the day when the light is really heavy and high overhead. Go out later when it's down low. Morning or afternoon, look into the light. Did that make sense? I hope so. Hey, Paul Alexander. Nice to see you here. Haven't spoken to you for a while. So has anyone got any other questions? If you do, pop them in. I'll have a look. I haven't even come. Oh, g'day, Mike. I'm having to look down here and actually go on to Facebook on my laptop, and this is what I'm watching. I can't even see the comment. Oh, g'day, Warwick. Yeah, there. No, different questions. All right. I don't think I've even made it to Facebook. There you go. All right, look, terrific. Hey, Kimberly. Here we go. I'm going to put up a question here. Hang on, Kimberly. Does yellow light hide wrinkles? That's an interesting one. Yellow light. I've never heard that. Yellow light hide wrinkles. I would say no, but I'll tell you something about yellow light. When you are setting up your shots, and sometimes, it's called color balance, because light comes back to the human eye. The human eye is great. We look at all different light sources and it all looks the right color to us, but cameras can't handle that. And so quite often it goes from yellow to blue. If you're setting up your shot and you are looking at it and going, oh, it looks a bit blue, or maybe it looks a bit yellow. If you have a choice and you can't get it to look what you think is normal, if you can only get it to look yellow or blue, always go yellow. And here's why, and I've just known this is from hundreds and hundreds of times. If you put show a shot to someone that's blue, people go, there's something wrong with it, because it just looks cold. It looks like, it's a bit sickly. But a yellow shot is warm, and it just makes you feel good. And people go, oh, that looks really nice. It's just a psychological thing. So if ever in doubt, go yellow. But as far as for looking younger, the closer your light is to the lens, so if that's the lens there, if you can put your light just above, directly above, generally the younger you're going to look. It's really good. And also, when you look at your camera settings, I know we've got 4K. I know we've got that. Some people, I want to really shoot in 4K. It looks amazing. But it makes your wrinkles look amazing too. Just remember that. But getting that light just as close to the lens as possible. In glamour photography, it's set just a little bit above, just about that far above, that far above. And it's called the glamour light. And a lot of glamour photography is shot with one light there, glamour light. Would you have a ring light? Hey, Mark, I'll just go back to you. When I was out in the sun looking, I tended to squint, and the shadow under my nose looked really big and odd. Yep, we'll get a smaller nose, Mark. What can I say? The best videos I did in the middle of the day were when I was standing under a large fig tree in the shade, and I was sitting inside the entrance to a theatre. Now, that's right. See, when you're under that large fig tree, but what is probably happening, there was a lot of grass. I'm guessing this was probably in the park, the domain or whatever it is there. And there's probably a lot of grass with a lot of sun. That is like a big soft light that's bouncing in and filling you under there. So again, you're in the dark looking out into the bright. Good work. Kimberly, again, Would you have a ring light? No, I wouldn't. And here's why, Kimberly. Ring lights, so yes, you've got glasses. Ring lights are a big problem with glasses. Number one, so those big circles. So a ring light, in case you don't know, it looks like a circular fluoro. You know the circular fluoros you just get in your house? That's essentially what a ring light is, but they charge you a whole heap more for it. They put it on a stand and put a clamp. You can put your phone or your camera in the middle. So you've got a ring light and you put your camera in your middle. It is good. It is a nice soft light, but one of the problems with it is the eyes are like reflectors. If you go in and look at someone's eyes, I can tell, or anyone can tell, what lights have been used by looking at the eyes. So if you can zoom in close enough, if the quality's good enough on a photo, you can actually see the lights being used, and you can tell exactly. You can tell if it was the sun, the late afternoon. You can tell if it was a hexagonal light or whatever. Ring lights actually make a big ring in the eyes, and they look really, they're popular with people on Instagram if you're 16 years old and you're a fashion influencer, makeup influencer, and it's all about your face and people looking at you, and a lot of vanity in there. But for business videos, always remember this: distractions dilute your message. Distractions dilute your message. And if people are looking at those round rings on your eyes, which you might think that, oh, that makes me look really sort of, interesting. If they're looking at that and thinking about that, which they will be, they are not listening to the content of your message. So for business videos, I recommend you do not use a ring light. However, if you've got one and it works for you, go knock yourself out. Yeah. Okay, there we are. Look, hey, we're coming up to the half hour again. Thank you all so much for those questions. Please give me more. I love the questions. This is good. Gives me a chance to create some new content. So contact me. I'm happy to take them and I'll provide something for you. If not, there you go. Have another lovely week, and I will see you all sometime in the future.